So let's get started. Welcome to the Dashboard Dojo. Today in the dojo, we're going to talk about formulas for sales reporting in Salesforce. I'm joined by Kyle Shagnon, OpFocus's event manager. Hey, Kyle, how's it going today?
Going well. Glad to be
Okay,
here.
great. My name is David Carnes, and let's get started. So today we're going to do a quick introduction. We'll dive into formulas for sales reporting. We'll go through some techniques. We'll go through some practice. We'll talk about some upcoming OpFocus events and training, and then the upcoming dojo topics. We'll have time for Q&A. If you do have a question along the way, we'll try to monitor the chat. Again, my name is David Carnes. I'm the chairman and chief evangelist of OpFocus. I've been honored to be part of the Salesforce MVP program the past year. This is my dog who's like 2 feet away from me on the floor. I realize now I've been inflating his size. He's 72 pounds, a golden doodle. I seem to have crept that up over 80 pounds. But he's really been pretty great through COVID. He's just sort of always 2 feet away. I think he's licking the floor right now. So that's a little bit about me and my dog. So OpFocus, we're a consulting firm. We're a team of about 60 scattered across the US and Canada. We work with SaaS companies to optimize their revenue operations. So we help them scale their go-to-market operations. We've been in the Salesforce world since 2006. So if it's your first time joining the dojo, you may wonder, what is a dojo? I lived in Japan for a few years, and I just love this idea of people getting together and practicing the arts and the martial arts. And people of all levels would practice together. And I think this is sort of the spirit behind the Dashboard Dojo. We've been holding sessions for about 1.5 years, about almost twice a month. So we've got lots of recordings, and you can find those directly on dashboarddojo.com. There's a recordings link, including 3 prior recordings on formulas. So early last year, we did 3 back-to-back sessions. So a year ago, we did 3 back-to-back sessions on formulas, and even deeper dive than we can do today. All right, so our topics for today, we'll just talk about formulas in general in Salesforce and what our options are to support reporting. We'll dive into row-level formulas and talk about 3 specific examples, having some fun with emojis to do the opportunity size. We'll do an example of creating a 3rd grouping on close date. So we'll use a row-level formula to do that. We'll also do an exercise on lead aging. We'll then shift to summary formulas. There's some really good common examples. So every report can have 1 row-level formula. Every report can have up to 5 summary formulas. So you first have to group by something. We'll talk about win rates, month over month, dollar change and percentage change. And we'll talk about, if we're looking in year over year with quarter over quarter, and we want to do what percentage is this quarter within that year, we'll talk about how to achieve that. And then we'll shift gears into something a little more advanced, which is cross-block formulas. In order to use a cross-block formula, we have to have a joined report. And so we'll go into some interesting examples with that. So once again, before we get started, if it's your first time in the dojo and you haven't yet set up the dev org, there's 2 steps. If you want to do the hands-on exercises today, we have a couple of exercises we'll do. If you want to do them with us, I suggest you do that not in production, but in a dev org. And here's an example of one with instructions on how to get it set up. All right, so we have options when reporting in Salesforce. For years, we would think about, well, I should probably go create a custom formula field to solve this or that. And over time, Salesforce has given us row-level formulas. Summary formulas have been around for a while. Cross-block formulas have also been around for a while, but there are different use cases for them. So I know this is an eye chart, but I wanted to sort of get it all in one place. So for row-level formulas, we have the ability to do output as numbers, which could be numbers or currency. We can do it as date, we can do it as date time, or we can output text. There are about 39 functions that are displayed when you go to create a row-level formula. There are about 39 of them displayed, but I want you all to keep in mind that you can do more, you can use more functions than are listed in the row-level formula editor. So, some special considerations, row level formulas are always available. So on any report, you can have up to one row level formula. It evaluates just one record. This is, unfortunately, if you're using Classic, it's only available in Lightning. So that's a good reason to move to Lightning. Summary formulas can output numbers, percent, or currency. And these appear, the option to create a summary formula appears when you add your first grouping to a report. So there are a lower number of functions available, but there are some special functions available, such as parent group val and pre-group val. We're going to talk about both of those today. So some special considerations for summary formulas, they require a group. And basically you're evaluating the groupings on the report, so the grouped records. So you'll only ever see a summary formula output at the subtotal level or the grand total level. There are some special things you can use within summary formulas. You can reference uniques, you can reference summaries, you can reference row counts. I mentioned crossblock formulas. They are only available with a joined report, and they allow you, when working with a joined report, let's say that you have two blocks, to essentially reference the other block in your block and either do math or do other types of things across the blocks. So we have the similar functions available when doing cross-block formulas. What's interesting is if I said with summary formulas, you can only have 5 per report. But if you change that report to a joined report, suddenly you can have 10 summary formulas per block, which is sort of this very large number. And I don't know why the floodgates were released with just joined reports, but perhaps it was just for more interesting analysis. So we'll look at some examples of that. And what I don't want you to forget, sort of the old standby, always in the back of your mind when you encounter a challenge with reporting, think that maybe a formula can help solve that particular problem that you have. Now we've got good options with row, summary, and crossblock, but there's always in the back of my mind, and I had an example just the other day where the only option to solve it was to create a custom formula field on the underlying object. And the example yet the other day was somebody wanted to add a cross filter to a report, and we couldn't use advanced filter logic when filtering the cross filter. And the only way to do it was to create a formula field, which is then referenced by the cross filter. And we essentially, in that custom formula field, sort of buried the complexity of what we would have done with advanced filter logic if it was available. So that may sound like a bunch of mumbo jumbo, but basically keep in the back of your mind that we always have the option to create a formula field. We don't have to put that formula field on a page layout. We can just use it in our reporting. All right, let's dive right into row level formulas. So row level formulas, as I said, allow us to evaluate individual records. We can have one per report. This works with numbers, text, date, time, and pick lists. So that the fields that you can work with is different than the data types you output. So you can't output a pick list, but you can work with a pick list within that row level formula. So these are great for aging, other types of date calculations. If you need to change a data type, maybe it is a date time and you want it to be a date, or it's currently a date and you want it to be text. We can do things like that. These are really helpful for concatenating information, also flagging anomalies. So when you create a row level formula, what's great is they're very flexible. We can use them in grouping, we can use them in filters, we can use them in summary formulas. So it's super helpful. They cannot, however, be referenced within a bucket column. They can't be used in a cross filter. So I'm not too worried about that. We have an example here of something a little bit fun, but basically this is combining two things, a row level formula with emojis, and this could just add some color to a report. So this is a very simple example, but basically I've gone to the report and I've said, if the amount is greater than $1 million, show the whale emoji. And an emoji is just text. So you put it in quotes and it'll display it on the report. There are, I believe, hundreds of emojis available. So if it's above $1 million, show the whale. If it's else, if, and then I have another if statement here nested. If it's over 250,000, it's in our sweet spot. So I'm showing the target, else, and that's what this last comma does. It says else. show the potato for small potatoes. So I think I've got this example open, and you can see that here. When we work with any type of formula, you can tell that it's a formula column by the FX up at the top. So let me make this one notch bigger, and you can see the FX here, and you can see the emojis. So this is not an editable column because it's a formula. So all formula output will just be read-only, not editable. But if I come in and edit the report, to see that if I wanted to add a row level formula, I can't right now because there's already one on the report, but you can see here next to the columns, if I go to the down arrow and choose add row level formula, it'll bring up the formula editor. I've already got one here. Oops, did I just, oh, here it is. And this is that one. When you create a formula, you've got this nice formula editor. You have the fields selector over here on the left and the function selector over on the right. When Salesforce introduced row level formulas, they upgraded the formula editor for all the 3 different types of formulas we can have on the report. So they all look the same with fields on the left and functions. I will basically 100% of the time use the field picker over here because there are field names you won't reference correctly. Some fields behind the scenes, like stage, the opportunity stage, we've known it as stage for the 17 years I've worked on the platform, but under the hood, it's referred to as stage name, and you'd need to know that in order to write it correctly within the formula. So this is why I'll always use the field picker here, select my field, click insert, and it drops it over here on the right. So also we have a list of functions. So depending on the type of formula you have a list of functions, and we can see date, time, logical, and math. I want to encourage you, there are over 60 functions available within formulas in Salesforce. There's only 39 here. There are more that you can use than are in this list. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Similar with these operators here, there are only 7 operators listed, but there are like 15 operators that are usable within reporting. I don't know why they didn't show more. Maybe they just thought these were the most used. But you choose your output type for an emoji. The output is text, and then you go ahead and write your formula. You do have a validate button here at the bottom. I use that religiously. This doesn't say whether your formula is correct for what you want it to do. It does show you whether the syntax will work, is acceptable by the formula editor. So there's kind of 2 different tests. One is the syntax correct? Use the validate button. Otherwise, after it says the validation's okay, and you add it to the report, you still want to test your formula that it actually does what you want it to do. So this one here is pretty straightforward. It has 2 ifs. One is a nested if, but we start off with an opening if, and we say if the amount is greater than $1 million, comma, and then here's the value of true, it's the whale, comma, and here's the value of false. So if it's not a whale and it's below that, then we're going to do another if and show the value of true, which is the target, versus the value of false. Before I move on, I just want to point out that within help, there's a very, very thorough list of all the functions available within formulas in Salesforce and all the operators, and there are examples for each one. It's a really, really good file to take advantage of. All right. Yes. So Chris just asked a question about flagging anomalies. I will show you that. But I do want to try to do one together. Let's actually do this example together. So we're going to create a report on opportunities. And we're going to group it 3 times. We're going to group it by the fiscal year, the fiscal quarter, and then by the month. And to do by the month, we're actually going to need a 3rd close date field, because there are 2 out of the box. This one that says close date 2, it's actually a formula that pre-existed formulas. So we're just going to essentially replicate that and create something called close date 3. So to do that, if we go into our system and we go to the reports tab and we just create a new report. So why don't we do this one together, and then I'll have you do an exercise for the next one. So if we click new report, and we'll choose opportunities, click continue. So I'm creating a new report on opportunities. One little, little cheat here is you can see always in the gray circle what is the report type. So if you fell behind, you could still see the report type and know what we're reporting on, what's in this gray circle here. So what we're going to do is we're going to essentially group this report twice by close date. And the first time, let's group it by just the plain old close date. So we're going to group the rows. And you see that the default grouping on dates is just individual days. So that's not going to work. So when we add our first grouping on close date, let's go ahead and use the down arrow and group by fiscal year. So we've added our first grouping on close date. Now, thankfully, Salesforce has created another close date field because you can't reuse the same column multiple times in groupings. So we need a second one, and we're going to need a third one in a minute. That's when we're going to create the row level formula. So let's group again by close date. And let's do this one by fiscal quarter. So again, we're grouping all the opportunities. We're grouping them by close date and for the fiscal year and close date for the fiscal quarter. Why don't we, before we go create the row level formula, let's just update our filters. So if we click on the filter tab here and change it to all time. So I'm just going to basically open this up so we can see more quarters than just the current quarter. So again, with the filters, I went to close date all time. And now let's go create our row level formula. So we have the basics in place here. So to do that, let's go down to the word columns on the outline tab. To the right of it, let's choose add row level formula. And let's call this close date 3. And our output is going to be a date. And literally our formula is super, super simple. It's just give me the close date. That's it. So I'm going to highlight the close date from the fields over on the left, click insert. I'll validate it. My output is of type date. I'll click apply. And now my formula has been added at the bottom of the list here, and it's just a column. So if I get rid of some of these extra columns, we might be able to see it over on the right. Boy, we've got a lot of columns here, or at least I'm zoomed in. That's probably the other problem. So let's get rid of a bunch of these. Here it is over here on the right. You can see with the FX to it. So this is a row level formula that's been added, but now because this is a row level formula, we can add it as a third grouping. So let's go ahead and do that. And you're going to find it all the way at the bottom. There's a category listing the row level formulas. There can only be one, so I'm not sure why they have plural, but there's just one. So let's choose close date. And once again, the close date grouping is based on the day of the individual day. Let's go ahead and change that to calendar month. We also have calendar month and year. We've got two different choices. Let's keep it interesting. Let's choose calendar month and year, and we can just see the individual dates. If I wanted calendar month with the years, I could show that as well. And if I now collapse the report, hide the detail rows, you can see this is starting to take shape. Probably what I'd do is make it a little more interesting and sum the amount column just to see a little bit more data, but you can start to see each of the quarters fill out, and then that row level that we added, the row level formula on the close date. All right, great. So that's one example. And it was a very simple formula, just adding a row level formula on the close date itself. So this absolutely is fine. We're just basically creating a clone of the close date. This happens to be the third one that's in our system. So I'd like you to try an example on your own, and then we'll review it together. So basically, management is antsy that leads languish in our sales process. To inspire the reps to action, we're going to display how many days open. So what I'd like you to do is create a report on leads, and then adjust the filters to show only open leads. And I've got an example of that on the screen up here on the right. And then I want you to add a formula, row level formula, to your report And the formula is pretty simple. It's the now function, which is now open paren, close paren, minus the created date. So since we're only looking at open opportunities, we can just do now minus the created date. Not even open opportunities, open leads, sorry. So again, this is the hands-on part of the session. I'd love to have you try creating a row level formula on a leads report. So if you create a leads report, adjust the filters, as you can see up in the screenshot in the top right. And let's go ahead and add a row level formula. All right, how did that go for you? Why don't we take a look in the system? I'll show you how I tackled that one. So if we, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of this one. So basically, this is the output that I came up with. So I have a report and I just called it open leads. And oftentimes when I'm testing a formula, I will show any of the columns that are used in calculating the formula right next to the formula. Just a nice way of testing it. So something that was created on November 19th is currently 96 days old. And if I come in to edit my report, and I can see the formula down on the bottom left. If I click on it, I can choose to edit the formula and we can see the formula here. So probably I would get rid of the decimals. I don't know that the decimals are all that meaningful. So like what's a tenth of a day sort of thing. And this would essentially round up or round down. It would just round appropriately. We do have access to a rounding function, but I don't even think it's necessary. Just by setting the decimal points to 0, it works that way. So again, if I was doing this from scratch, I would create a new report on leads. And then once I'm here, I'd go in and change my filters and say the lead status is not equal to closed converted or closed not converted. So not equal to those. And then I'd come back here, choose add row level formula. And then we could just quickly enter this simple formula, now open paren, close paren. So I know that that's a function when I see these parens like this. So some functions, you put something within the parentheses. A date function, there's today, there's now, which is date time. You just have the open paren, close paren for that function. And then you can see we're subtracting the created date here. All right, great. So hopefully that went well for you guys. Let's look at summary formulas now. So summary formulas, as we said, they allow you to summarize at a grouping or grand total level. You can sum, min, max, average. You can also do things with uniques. Within summary formulas, you can have up to 5 summary formulas per report. They can't reference each other. These can be used in charts. These can be used in conditional formatting. You can see the example here I have on the screenshot where I'm done a win ratio and I have the color scheme over to the right. So these cannot be used in filters or buckets. And it's very easy to add them. Once you've added your first grouping, you can see up here in the top right screenshot, you add your first grouping, then suddenly what was grayed out is no longer grayed out, the add summary formula. So I'd like you to try an example of a summary formula now. And basically with this one, you're going to calculate the win rate by industry. So what that means is we're going to go ahead and create a report on opportunities. So if you go back to the reports tab, choose to create a new report, make it on opportunities. And then what I want you to do is adjust the filters so that it shows opportunities of all dates, but ones that are closed. So to do a win rate, we don't want open opportunities. We just want ones that are won or lost. So those are in the category of closed, or it's called a status in the filter. So this is the filter that I want you to create on the opportunity report. So close date of all time and the opportunity status of closed. And then I want you to add a group on industry and then add the summary formula. And this is what the summary formula will look like. And what you could do is scroll down on the list of fields and you can see that there's a one field and you can insert the one sum and then use a divided by, and you can insert the closed sum. So finally, what I'd like you to do is toggle the detail rows off. So those toggles appear when you add your first grouping. That'll collapse the report. So this is how we can generate a win rate. So again, you can have 5 of these per report. So you could do different types of calculations. These summary formulas only show at the subtotal level or the grand total level. And we do have control over it, and I'll show you that. So why don't we do this? Why don't I show you this output? And I called this past win rate report, and I've got my win rates here, and I've collapsed the report. I've grouped it by owner. So I think I told you to group it by industry. So let me fix this one. I'll group it by industry. So if we come in here and we edit the report. So I said I would group it by industry. So here's my win rate. While you're in the edit, please note that this is just preview data. Don't make business decisions based on the preview pane, okay? So this is not the real data. I should run it to see the real win rate. But before we get to that, so when you created this report on opportunities, I asked you to go in and update the filters to close date all time and the opportunity status of closed. I've looked at other people's videos on YouTube and I see them including open opportunities in a win rate. I feel fairly passionate that you should not include open opportunities in a win rate. Essentially, you'll penalize somebody for being good at prospecting. If they have a whole bunch of open opportunities, personally, I don't feel like that should be counted in the win rate. It should just be deals that are won or lost. We already know the outcome, and let's use those. So if we come down to our outline, because we've added the grouping on industry, now we can add summary formulas. So we can see that here. And here's the win ratio formula. So I do want to point out that at summary formulas and crossblock formulas, we also have a sub-tab here in the field, the editor, the formula editor. So if I click on display, where should this formula be applied? All summary levels is the default. Sometimes when you add a formula, you don't want it to be at the grand total level. You just put it at the specific groups. There are some times where it doesn't make any sense to have it at the grand total level. The numbers don't make sense. So just keep this in mind that we could, and I'll do it here, just limit it to the one grouping. Once you choose a grouping, I only have one grouping on this report, but you can specify which specific grouping you want. I'll go ahead and click apply. And when I run this now, it'll be for industry, and there will be no, I think I've got to reload it. I probably have to save it and reload it. This shouldn't be here, the win percentage, but you can see the output here. Agriculture seems to be by far and away, we seem to win all our agriculture deals, and we're pretty terrible at our healthcare deals. So sort of interesting, simple little analysis looking at past win rates. All right, so I want to show you a couple more examples of summary formulas, and we're starting to get to the deeper end of the swimming pool here, but these are super, super useful. So to show you an example of Pregroup val function, this is available with summary reports and crossblock reports. And suddenly, you know, once you've added a grouping, such as on the close date here, you can see on the screenshot on the right, I might sum up the amounts, and if I wish, I can add a Pregroup val function that compares the January sum, and we could subtract the December sum. So 14.2 minus 10.1 is 4.1 over here. Now we can also do other interesting things with the math. We can do calculations of percentages and whatnot. So this is the example what this Pregroup val function looks like when we, on a summary report, we're grouping by dates and maybe grouping, essentially grouping them by months, the close date. And you can see the function here, the formula is amount sum, which is that 14 million, minus the previous group vals sum, which is the 10 million. And you're basically referencing the close date is the grouping that we're referencing. Now, there is one other argument that can be included. You could put a comma, the default is 0, but you could go as high as 12, and you could do this year's January versus the prior year January. So let me show you that in the system. So if we look at our month over month change, and I have two calculations here, that same 4.1 and the 40%, this period over this period. And you can see here that I've also added a chart. So we can have a chart on the output. So essentially, this is on the dollar change month to month, which is kind of cool analysis over time to see it visually. But if I wanted to do, instead of month over month, and do year over year by month, what I would do is I'd come right back in. Again, we just added summary formulas here, and you can see them down below in the bottom left. But if I choose this month over month $ change, so here's the Pregroup val function. And within the parentheses, it takes, hey, what is it that you want to compare the previous group to? So we're comparing the amount of this close date grouping. And if I add comma 12 here, this will compare to 12 months ago, 12 months before. Now I could also do 4 months ago, and I could do this quarter over last quarter, the first month of the quarter, something like that. So let me come in here and validate this. It says it's valid. I'll go ahead and click apply. Now, when I run the report, I'm going to see something very different. So basically, we're seeing December 2021 is $29 million over December 2020. So a huge amount of growth. And I only updated this one, and I did it so that you can see that basically if you're doing that many groups ago, you're going to see a bunch of blanks for where there is no data above that top level grouping. There's nothing above December, so I can't do those next 11 months. The first one that I can do is the December a year later, and that's what that output is. So Justin asked the question, hopefully I just answered it, that because I did a 12-month offset, the 11 above, there's nothing to compare to, so that's going to show up blank. So hopefully I'm answering your question, Justin. This one is just this month compared to this prior month. It's a 40% growth. So there's 1 month. There'll always be 1 month at the top that's blank because there's nothing above that particular month. All right, great. So that's the Pregroup val. And to show you another one, I want to show you parent group val. And we're starting again to get a little more interesting here, but you can see in my output in the screenshot that with the parent group val, that I have a close date, and I've got another close date, and I've got a sum of the amounts, and I want to know the percentage of this year's sales. So 10 million is all of the sales we have within this year, but that's not true of, so we only had 1 quarter of sales, so that equals 100% for 2020. But for 2021, we did 333 million in sales. And you can see here, this is probably the easiest math. This, either the 118 million, that doesn't seem like it's correct, that's 33%, and this one's 32%. So, oh, it's not based on the dollars. This is based on the record count. So this brings up an interesting point. So 100 out of 304 is about 32%. 102 out of 304 is 33%. I was assuming I had done the math on the sum of the amount, but you can also do it on the record count. So if I had just looked down here, I would have seen that this formula is saying, give me the row count and divide it by the parent group val of the row count of the thing called close date 2. So my close date 2 is the grouping on the year, and I'm basically saying, basically take the record count here and do the math, divide it by the subtotal for that grouping. So to show you this one quickly in the system. So basically this, we only had 10 deals. So the 10 deals into 10 deals is 100%, and the 100 deals into 304 is 32%. So to go look at that formula, if I double click on this, I can see I'm using the parent group val. And this is one that it takes a couple times to get it right, because if you come to the display, the row grouping is on the close date and we're comparing it to the parent grouping. So this, I'm using close date twice. I could also mess this up and do it by the outer grouping, which is close date 2. So this is where people make mistakes and they give up, but just come in here and try, flip it to the other display and see if you can get the right result. So I could actually do the math differently. I could update this and go ahead and choose the amount sum, and I could actually replace this with the amount sum. So I had been doing the math on the record count. Now I'm going to do the math on the amount. So I've just updated my formula, and it's basically going and grabbing not this grouping, not the prior grouping, but the parent grouping. Go get that subtotal and do the math. So if I apply this, we'll see very different numbers here if I go ahead and run this. So now I've changed this, and basically this makes more sense that the 118 million is 35%. So 118 divided by the 333, that's what that's doing. So parent group val, and you could actually have 3 groupings, and you can do a parent group val as well. All right, so I do want to talk about cross-block formulas because I think this is where there's a lot of power. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for you guys to do more analysis within your organization, so within your companies. So cross-block formulas are available in joined reports. This allows you to summarize the grouping level or the grand total level. We can sum, min, max, we can average. I believe we can do uniques as well. I should have added that, sorry. You can have up to 10 of these at each block. So even more analysis can be done just by changing it to a joined report instead of a regular report. And really where things get interesting is that we can calculate across the blocks. When I'm doing cross-block formulas, 100% of the time, I will use the insert button to make sure that I reference the fields correctly. And you can see here that what Salesforce does to maintain sort of this cohesion is that it references each one of the blocks using array notation. So B0 is the first block, B1 is the second block. So in arrays, you always start with a 0. I don't know why, it's just been that way since I did my master's in software engineering. So the first block is B0, the second block is B1, and we're basically doing math across the blocks. So I've got a couple examples of this. And why don't we do together? I'll just walk you through the step-by-step. Let's actually just go build this. We're going to create an opportunity report. We're going to set the filters, the close date of all time, the opportunity status of open. We're going to sum the amounts. And what we're going to analyze is we're going to look at one block on our report is going to have all our open pipeline. And then the next block is going to have just our new logo pipeline. And what percentage of our pipeline is the new logo pipeline. So this is a joined report with 2 blocks. You can see on the screenshot on the right. We're going to sum the open pipeline on the left, and we're going to sum the new logo pipeline. So it's going to have a different set of filters, one additional filter item. And then what we can do is create a cross-block formula that divides this 2.2 into the 11.2 and give you 20%. So let's go build this one together. So before we move on, Justin asked the question, if you don't have opportunities in one of those months, will the 12 be off by 1? So I don't, that's a really good question. Let me go back to that, Justin. I'll see if I can manufacture it. So good question. I don't think so, but I should double check. Okay, so for this one here, let's go ahead and build this one together. So if we start with a new report, And not all of you created joined reports before, so we'll get that 2-for-1. We'll create a joined report together. So if I go to the opportunities, choose the opportunity report type. So again, from the report tab, create a new report on opportunities. And let's just build this together. So the first thing I'll do is update the filters on my new report. So we want to show all open pipelines. So we're going to make the close date all time and the opportunity status open. So we're making 2 filter updates to our brand new report: close date of all time and opportunity status of open. Next, why don't we go to the outline and let's click on the amount and let's sum it. Click apply. I'm not going to spend any more time on this. I'm going to go ahead and create my second block. I'm going to go ahead and start the path down to creating a joined report. So probably normally I'd get rid of a bunch of these columns, but let's go ahead and keep going. So up in the top left corner, this is where the magic happens, where we can create a joined report. So that's what we need to do a cross-block formula. You can't do a cross-block formula unless you have blocks. So in order to have blocks, we have to have a joined report. So if I come up here to the top left corner, click on the black triangle and choose joined report. Then what's going to happen, and when I click apply, is it's going to basically give me a block. It's still not all that pretty to look at, but why don't we go right up to the block name, and it says opportunity block 1. And let's relabel this. Let's call this open pipeline. Click enter, and it's basically relabeled the block. One reason that I'll always relabel the blocks in my joined report is basically then your columns can be referenced and your filters can be referenced. So it's making your life a lot easier, and it's making your users happy because they can know what the blocks are. So again, we've just created a report on opportunities. We went right to the filters and made it close date all time and opportunity status open. And then we went to the outline and we summed the amount. And then we made it a joined report. So on the joined report, we relabeled the block to open pipeline. Let's go ahead and add a second block now. So when you add the second block, we do that by clicking the add block button up here at the top. Let's choose opportunities again. So if you haven't created a joined report in a while, you may remember in Classic, you could only use a report type one time. In Lightning, we can reuse the same report type over and over, which is kind of cool. It makes life easier to do interesting analysis. So let's choose opportunities, and note that there is the ability to not include the default columns. I'm not going to uncheck the box, just going to leave it alone, but just to point that out that it is there. It's sort of a nice feature if you don't want 26 columns or whatever, however many there are on an opportunity report. So let's go ahead and click add block. So I'm going to leave the include default columns. I'm going to click add block to add an opportunity report to my opportunity report. Now what Salesforce has done is it's given us the block down here. It's now called opportunities block 1. Why don't we sum the amount again? So we'll click on the amount and sum that, click apply. Why don't we go up to the filters, and you can see your open pipeline filter. I can collapse that if I want. And let's make this all close date all time, opportunity status open. And let's add one more filter. Now, I have tinkered with my system. I think for you, it's called new customer. I think for me, it's called new business because I tinkered with it. You may have a different value. Just choose the one that has the word new in it. So basically for the opportunity type field, which out of the box differentiates between new business and existing business, we're going to add a filter on that opportunity type to say, just give me all the new business. All right. So I'm going to gingerly, we have so many columns here, I'm going to gingerly scroll to the right so that I can relabel this block. And I'm going to call this new business. Okay. So we've created a joined report. We've created 2 blocks. We relabeled the blocks. We updated the filters on the blocks. We summed the amount on both blocks. Now let's go back to the outline tab And in order to add a formula, we're going to have to group across the blocks. So let's go ahead and do that. So where it says group across blocks, let's go ahead and group by, well, I don't remember what the exercise was. Group by industry. So let's do that. Is that what I really had? Okay, so we'll do industry. This is the account industry. Now, when you look at a joined report right away, it's like, blah, there's just too much here. Let's immediately, now that we've added our grouping, since Salesforce exposes the toggles at the bottom, let's go ahead and hide the detail rows. So if you come right down here, toggle off detail rows, and it's like, okay, that's better to look at. I might even turn off the record count, but we'll leave it for now. This is starting to look like a joined report. I've got my open pipe next to my new business. Now, if I, now is where I'll want to add a cross-block formula. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the outline tab. I'm going to collapse the open pipeline section just to make it easier to look at. So I'm updating the new business. I had relabeled that block, the second block that we added. And I'm going to go down here and I have two choices. I can, all right, that was a little spasm in my system here. I can add a summary formula, which will only be referenced to this one block, or I can add a cross-block summary formula. Let's choose the cross-block summary here. So again, we're going to the second block in our joined report. I called mine new business, and we're going to add a cross-block summary formula. Now this formula is pretty straightforward. We're going to do the amount sum of our the second block we added, which is referenced as B1 amount sum, and we're going to divide it by the B0 amount sum. So back over here, what we can do is we can say new business, or let's call it new logo, that's shorter, new logo percentage. And my output is going to be a percent. So again, we've added a cross-block formula. We're in the formula editor. Let's give it a name, new logo percent. The output type is percent. And then for our formula, it's very, very simple. We're going to do the open pipeline. So it's basically, you have two sections here. And this is probably where a lot of people make mistakes, is you have a whole list of fields that are referenced to the first block in your report. There's a whole list of fields referenced to the second block. We want the second block, new business, the amount, and again, I'm going to click insert, and that's going to give me the words B1 and then the pound amount colon sum. And then I'm going to divide that by, and I'm going to go back up to the top grouping, the first block, open pipeline, and choose the amount. So you could also just write B1 pound amount colon sum divided by the B0 amount sum, essentially. So if I validate this, you can see that it's valid. We'll go ahead and click apply, and we can see now the new logo percentage. So it's basically, this is sample data. So let's go ahead and run the report. And you can see that 2.2 million is about 20% of the 11 million. So this is our new logo business. Probably in real life, I'd just tidy this up a little bit. I'd probably get rid of the record count and just see the dollar amount. So if I toggle off the record count, very specifically, this is my total open pipe, this is my new logo pipe, and I can see the percentage of that. All right. So hopefully that went well for you guys, and you got to practice joined report and a new cross-block formula. I do want to show you two more examples of cross-block formulas. One of them is a current quarter win rate projection. So basically, what I've done here is I have three blocks on my report. Past win rate, this is like Bruce Kennedy, 71% win rate. My current quarter one deals, my current quarter open pipe, and I'm basically adding the current quarter one of 6 million, 6.7 million, plus 71.43% times the remaining open pipe, and that's the sum over here on the right. So this is just one type of simple projection based on past history plus what we've currently sold. And the formula is just a little more interesting because there are three blocks now. So it's basically doing the math of the one sum divided by the closed sum of referencing this block, and then basically multiplying that by the amount that's open in the third block, and then we're adding it to what's already closed one. And that's what this particular example is doing. So I get my current quarter projection. So if we look for sort of an easy one here, 51%. So we've already won this guy, Catherine, this sales rep has won 300,000 so far this quarter. She has 879,000 open in her pipeline times the 51%. And for some reason I have the output of percentage. So there's a mistake here in this one. That's funny. So if I scroll down here and do my current quarter projection, now this is going to limit me for what I can do. If looks like it's not limiting me, I can change it from percent. I don't know why that was percent. Let's change it to currency and we'll see our actual number. So there you can see editing a formula if you've made a mistake. For some formulas, you can't edit them. So here, this looks better. So 50% of that is like what, 440 plus 308 is that number there. So one other example that I think is kind of cool, this is even getting more interesting. This is a joined report with 5 blocks. So I have my total open pipe, my total opportunities committed by each of the reps, my total opportunities over 50%. And now each one of these, I'm doing a little bit of analysis of what's the percentage of the total. So what percentage is 10 million of his 21 million? Well, that I think we should have output as a percent, not as 0.49. What percentage is new logos? And then looking at one final block over here, what's their past win rate? So, you know, joined reports let us do a lot. And these cross-block formulas can let you do all kinds of analysis all together on one report. So I like this example to just on one report, just do a whole bunch of digging. And then I threw a scatter plot at the top. And it's so interesting. This person up here, their new logo business, I think it's what it is. Actually, let's go look in the system because I've got that open. So if we look at this, there's one outlier here. So when you use a scatter plot, this does a correlation. And I'm doing new logo percentage to total open pipe. So this person here, it's such a huge percentage of their business. It's Nicholas Weaver, 80% of their business is new logos that he's been out prospecting. So this is what's in his pipeline. So again, this is a joined report with 5 blocks, and I've just done different types of analysis for each block. All right. So we talked about a bunch of things. I think one of you earlier asked about doing more complex. This is a row level formula with just a bit more complexity into, you know, you basically can nest a bunch of ifs. There is an outer limit to complexity. It takes a while to actually get to that level. Clearly here, I haven't hit the complexity level for this. One of you asked about identifying issues with data and fixing it. I've got that example here where this is a real life example from the OpFocus system where I could tell that data hadn't been entered correctly, that we had companies that had bought something before and we had a new opportunity since then, and it was still listed as a new customer. So basically I created a row level formula looking for the anomalies. So if it was a new customer and they'd never sold anything to them before, it's truly a new customer. And in our business, it's still a new customer if within 6 months, we still consider it new business for the first 6 months if there are multiple opportunities. So that's just our business logic. And I embedded that into this row level formula. So I'll just show you the formula. And the beauty of this is that I could fix it with inline editing. So I'll show you that in 1 second. But this is the formula that I created. It's a row level formula, and it's basically got a bunch of nested ifs. And ultimately, it's either a problem or it's not a problem. And basically, I'm doing a test that determines it's a problem. And then I'm doing another test for another scenario determining it's a problem. And then there's another test that determines it's a problem. So basically, I had 3, and it looks like the threshold was the first 75 days. And then otherwise it's not a problem. So this is just an example of flagging an anomaly with a row level formula. And now in your systems now, we can do inline editing of reports. So there's a checkbox you can enable to enable inline editing in your report. So if I run this, I have the ability to come right in here, click on the pencil, and I can fix and update the data right here in the report. So just an example of using a row level formula to flag anomalies. Okay, so a couple of things. We have an upcoming event in March. So this is on March 17th. When is St. Patrick's Day, Kyle?
I do not know off the top of my head.
I feel like I don't know either, but I feel like it's that seems to be around that time, right? On the 17th of March, we'll do how to build a customer lifecycle that maximizes the customer lifetime value. And we have Chandler Packard, who's the director of customer success at OpFocus, another gentleman, Ehab from OpFocus, and then Kathy Kading, who's the VP of Professional Services at ListTrack, joining us to talk about that. You can register at opfocus.com/events. I'm actually back in training next week. We have a 2-day hands-on reporting workshop that I'll be teaching. Information's on our website at opfocus.com/training. I've also got an admin class coming up in June for 5 days. We have 3 upcoming Dōjō sessions, March 9th and March 23rd, both on Service Cloud, and we'll do formulas for Service Cloud on the 23rd. And then on April 6th, spring cleaning, decluttering your reports and dashboards tab. So I'll see if I can pick off a few more of the questions. So Victor asks, feel free to ignore, is there a way to do conditional formatting by comparing 2 fields based on a pick list on the record? For example, if actual hours is greater than forecast hours, shade the cell green. So yes, Victor, what you could do is create a row level formula that does that comparison and then create the conditional formatting on the row level formula. So absolutely, I think that should work for you. Justin asked the question, if you don't have opt-ins in one of those months, will 12 be off by 1? So it's a really good question. So if I go back to my month over month, I don't see any missing months. But if I were to manufacture a missing month, I'd probably have to go in and delete a whole bunch of opportunities here to make that happen. But Justin, why don't I do that and I'll tweet out the answer after. And I'm sorry that I don't have that set up. My data is just too good. So Justin asked the question, 5 blocks added total on this report. Absolutely. So within a joined report, you can have up to 5 blocks. Each is a separate report. And then you have a common grouping across the blocks. So I thought to show an example with 5 blocks just because you don't see them very often. Awesome. So I think we might have gotten all the questions. Imran asks, can we get the slide deck? I think we'll have the recording posted. So hopefully that's available to you. Well, great. So any other questions before we sign off? Hopefully we got to a lot of your questions. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining the Dashboard Dojo. We hope to see you at the next dojo, which is coming up. Did you find out if March 17th is?
I think that is St. Patrick's Day.
Okay, so the next dojo is on March 9th. Hopefully you can join us. You can sign up right on dashboarddojo.com. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, everyone.